Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and our spooky themed October month continues with the fourth edition of some stories about monsters. You can find the other three parts in episodes 82 and then 133 and 134. But this week, having five more stories here, looking at the story of the Loveland Frog and then monsters in Bear Lake, Utah, Mogollon, Arizona, Enfield, Illinois, and Fouke, Arkansas. So let's get into it. In 1868, an article appeared in Salt Lake City's Deseret News claiming that local Native Americans were talking about a, quote, strange serpent-like creature in the waters of Bear Lake, which is a large, I think it's a natural, in 1868 it probably would have been, a large freshwater lake on the border between Idaho and Utah. Natives were calling it the water devil, while other settlers in the area were just referring to it as the Bear Lake Monster. A few weeks later, another journalist interviewed several people around Bear Lake, and they all corroborated this story. There's this crazy serpent-looking monster swimming around Bear Lake. Well, the Mormons, they found out about this alleged monster and interviewed Charles C. Rich, the original author of the story, and conducted their own studies and interviews in the area, which is crazy to think. Like, the Mormon church is like now getting into paranormal monster sightings, and they're literally spending their own time and resources investigating this. The church eventually declared the story of the Bear Lake Monster to be, quote, indisputable, while the Salt Lake Tribune, who were not fans of the Mormons, wrote that the monster was the devil's brother and Brigham Young's cousin. Zing, zing, zing. Brigham Young himself even investigated this story, going so far as to send a large rope to Idaho to help capture the monster. Another resident in the area took it a step further by attaching a large hook to a 20-foot cable and 300 yards of rope. And at the end, he then attached a buoy and an anchor, basically just to try to catch this giant. Like, basically, he just turned it into just a giant fishing line, right? Like, you know how you go fishing, you have your little bobber. That's basically what this guy did, but just on a preposterously large scale. And this guy, if he caught it, he hoped that he could sell the captured monster to the circus. However, as these things tend to go, dozens of alleged sightings happened, but no one could ever produce any real defining characteristic of the monster, mainly because Charles Rich, who initially wrote the article, declared the entire thing a hoax in 1894, almost 30 years later. However, despite the person who literally made it up saying they made it up, people still continue to claim that the monster was real, including two men in 1907 who claimed that the monster had attacked their camp and killed one of their horses. Several other sightings were reported in the following years, with one as recently as 2002. I'm not sure if there's been another one since then, but like it's not a real monster. Like, the dude literally said, now, here's the thing. All kinds of gigantic fish, like there are gigantic sturgeon out in that area. I don't know if they're in the lakes, but I know they're in the rivers up there. And those things are massive, like huge, huge fish. There's also bears. So like, yeah, a bear could have easily gone into someone's camp and killed a horse. That's not out of the realm of possibility at all. But Bear Lake Monster, definitively not a thing. But there are people out there who still claim that it is. Fast forwarding to 1903, when I.W. Stevens reported to the Arizona Republican that he had encountered a strange creature near the Grand Canyon. This creature had long white hair and a matted beard that stretched down to its knees. Its fingernails were curled and warped around its fingers. It was completely naked, covered only by a thick coat of gray hair. Stevens watched as this creature drank the blood from not one, but two dead cougars that I guess it had killed. Then, when Stevens made eye contact with this creature, the creature threatened Stevens with a club and made, quote, a most unearthly screech, because that's how they talk back then. In the mid 1940s, a guy named Don Davis was on a Boy Scout trip near Payson, Arizona, in the pine forest of the Mogollon Rim, which is basically this 200-mile-long ridge that forms the southern edge of the Colorado Plateau, kind of out there where there's a surprising amount of trees, right? Like, it's weird. Like, you think of Arizona and you think it's like nothing but desert, but no, there's like a surprising amount of trees and forests in Arizona. And you don't tend to think of Arizona as having a lot of trees, but they do. So anyway, it's beside the point, honestly. There inside this forest, Don Davis came face to face with the same creature allegedly that Stevens had seen. He noted also the creature's massive muscly arms and, quote, expressionless eyes. Despite other sightings by various people, most scientists believe that the Mogollon Monster is just a myth, mainly because they don't think a creature that big would remain undiscovered in that part of the country, which, like, despite not being densely populated, is still well traveled. Like, you have all kinds of natural areas out there. I mean, it's the Sitgreaves National Forest, or Sitgreaves National Forest, Tonto National Forest, Petrified Forest is nearby, and it's kind of like in that similar area, honestly, like, it's not super far from Phoenix, right? Like, it's kind of in between Phoenix and Flagstaff, so a lot of things going on out that way. And then obviously you have the Grand Canyon a little bit farther north, so like there's still a lot of people coming through that area. And so even if there was this gigantic monster covered in white fur with crazy fingernails or whatever, like, somebody, more than two people, would have seen it at this point, right? But I also had this thought that, like, what if this was just like a dude who, I mean, in the span of 40 years, maybe probably wasn't the same dude. But I'm thinking, like, what if, in 1903 could have very well been like some dude, who like basically like deserted from maybe not the Civil War, but like I think the Spanish American War or the Mexican War was happening like late 1800s, something like that. Maybe he deserted and just like ran out into the desert to live amongst nature for the rest of his life. And so you don't have any way to get your hair cut or anything like that, so your fingernails get all long. Maybe he was one of those people who could naturally grow a really long beard. I don't know. That's perfectly possible. Now, could this person kill two cougars with his bare hands? I don't know. I don't want to be around that person who can, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. So, like, is it like some paranormal crazy cryptid or whatever? Probably not. May more than likely just be like some crazy dude who just broke it down entirely and decided to live in nature. That's if it's anything other than a hoax, it's probably that. All right. Fast forwarding now a few more decades, on May 2nd, 1971, when Elizabeth Ford was taking a nap at her home near Fouke, Arkansas, which is a small town in the southwestern part of the state, kind of close to the Texas border, a little bit south of Texarkana. I have not been there. I've drove through this general area several years ago when I was writing Hang the Elephant. Not a lot going on out there. Just a whole lot of nothing. A lot of trees, a lot of fields, a lot of swamps. That's about it, right? But this Elizabeth Ford taking a nap when all of a sudden a large furry arm with claws reached through the screen door. And that's obviously alarming for a lot of reasons, especially when you're just waking up for a nap. Elizabeth screams, and so Bobby and his brother Don, one of whom is probably Elizabeth's husband, Anyway, Bobby and his brother Don quickly ran into the room and chased this creature away. The two fired several shots, but despite thinking they had hit it, they didn't find any blood trails in the grass, no real evidence of where this thing had gone. Instead, they found a series of 3-toed footprints in the yard and scratch marks on the porch. So like not 3-toed footprints, but like 3 toes. So like whatever this thing was had 3 toes, which I know what you're thinking. Oh, big furry arm with claws. That's a bear. But bears don't have 3 toes. They have like the 5, I think. They have like a regular amount of toes. So it wasn't a bear unless, of course, this bear only had 3 toes because of like some birth defect or something. But that's not what we're going. It's 3 toes. So let's keep holding on to that detail. 3 weeks later, 3 people reported an ape-like creature crossing Highway 71 near Fouke. Other sightings trickled in over the next few days, accompanied by several more 3-toed footprints. Game warden Carl Gallion examined these prints but couldn't really identify what they came from or if they were even real. By the time word of the sightings hit the media, tons of people then came forward with their own sightings, dating as far back to 1946, although investigators, when they started going through all of these sightings, they ended up ruling out a lot of these accounts as just a misidentified black bear. One radio station in Little Rock offered a $1,090 bounty for the capture, which doesn't make any sense. Maybe it was like 10:90 a.m. Get your bear bounty or whatever. I don't know. It was just a random number. But when this radio station did that, several makeshift posses started scouring the forests and woods near Fouke with their dogs, but nothing was ever found. Over the next 7 years, hysteria over the monster just kind of ebbed and flowed as more sightings continued to occur. There was even the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, which was actually based on the Fouke Monster. That movie was released, which reignited some hysteria around it. In March 1978, there were 3 different sightings reported in other parts of the state. This time, though, livestock went missing, dogs were attacked, and this kind of marked the first time that any sort of violence, successful violence anyway, had been associated with this monster. In 1991, a report came in that someone saw the monster jumping off of a bridge, and in 1997, there were 40 sightings alone. So like way more than had been coming in over the previous years. And here's the thing. All of these reports that came in were pretty similar. This monster had long, dark hair. It was at least 7 feet tall, but maybe as tall as 10 feet. It had bright red eyes and weighed probably roughly around 100 pounds. 800 pounds, not 100. 800, that's a big difference. It ran fast with its arms gliding like a monkey. I don't know. I don't know how... I don't know what it, I don't, that's how it was described. I still don't know visually what that means. Like fast running, but with its arms gliding like a monkey. I don't know. It also emitted an awful stench that resembled a cross between a skunk and a wet dog, which if there are 2 worse smells in nature, other than like a dead animal, I don't know of what they could be, because that's like the worst. As with most monster sightings, people quickly came forward to claim that the Fouke Monster was just a hoax because no one really wanted to admit that Bigfoot was real. Because that's what this is, you guys. This is Bigfoot. This is it. This is Bigfoot. Dr. Frank Schambach from Southern Arkansas University said that primates, which more or less match the description of the Fouke Monster, had 5 toes, though, instead of 3. Even more, all of the evidence that exists for the Fouke Monster is just hearsay, right? Like, no one has ever made photographs of the footprints, which I don't even know how you don't do that. How do you not, all these footprints that are here, take a picture of them. Take a picture of the footprints. But everyone's just like, oh, that's cool. He's got 3 toes. Well, that's crazy. And then they just walked on. They just kept going. How do you not? So that's also a little bit of a red flag for me, at least, right? Like, no one's ever taken obviously no one's ever taken a picture of the Fouke Monster, but to not even take pictures of the footprints, what are you doing? You know? So I don't know. Maybe all the people in Fouke, or even just in Arkansas in general, are just playing a weird prank that they think people care about. Anyway, our next story here. On March 3rd, 1972, Officer Ray Shockey was driving down Riverside Drive along the Little Miami River in Loveland, Ohio, when something ran across the road in front of his car. Once this thing was fully in its headlights, Shockey was baffled by what he saw. Like, it was a frog. No doubt about it. It was a frog, but way bigger than any frog he had ever seen. According to Shockey, it was at least 3 feet tall and weighed at least 50 pounds, which is gigantic for a frog. He then watched as the frog stood up on its hind legs, climbed over the guardrail, and then scurried down towards the river. Apparently, Shockey did not bother to keep, chasing after that. 2 weeks later, Officer Mark Matthews reported another large animal crouched beside the road near where Shockey had made his initial report. But rather than letting it go, Matthews actually got out, shot it, and then stuffed it in his trunk. Okay. When Matthews showed Shockey, he likened it to a large iguana, which was at least 3 feet long, but missing its tail. At that point, Shockey confirmed that was the same creature he had seen 2 weeks before, which should be the end of the story, right? Like, oh, they shot a gigantic iguana, which still, a 3 foot long, 50-pound iguana is insane. But also, how do you not know what an iguana looks like? Shockey, Ray Shockey, he sees this creature walking across, he's like, man, it's like a frog, but it's like got a different head and arms and like legs that are different from a frog. And this one had a tail. I didn't know frogs had tails. It's because they don't, Ray. Frogs don't have tails. And so, obviously, Mark Matthews is a little more educated, sees this same creature, and kills it. And it's probably just an iguana. Maybe it was an iguana that people, had as a pet, and then maybe it escaped, or it got out, and they set it free. And now it's just living around Ohio. And look, here's the thing. I can believe a 3 foot long iguana, right? Especially from like head to the tip of the tail. That's not that far out of the question. Especially because like reptiles just like never stop growing, right? So this is probably a pretty old iguana. It's just been eaten forever. They don't know when to stop. And to see that in Ohio, where iguanas are not native, makes a lot of sense. One got out. And so a 3 foot long, 50-pound iguana, not out of the question. I believe this one. All right. I am saying this is a go. All right. But that's not the end of the story, because people just can't let silly things like this go. Tales of the Loveland Frog actually dated back to 1955, nearly 2 decades before Shockey's initial encounter. 3 different versions of a story exist about this initial encounter that tell of a man, either a businessman or a salesman, who saw 3 creatures standing on their hind legs on the side of a road or on a bridge or under a bridge. Like, they're all kind of different. The man kind of drove up on them and watched the creatures talking amongst themselves for a bit before one of the creatures held up a wand like a warlock, which then fired sparks into the air. And the sparks startled the man, who then sped away in his car. So now we've got wizard frogs in Ohio. That's not real at all. Anyway, even more recently, in 2016, 2 teenagers playing Pokemon Go near Loveland, Ohio, claimed they saw a giant frog near Lake Isabella. According to them, the frog stood up on its hind legs, looked in their direction, and then they didn't even wait to see what this frog was going to do. They just ran off. And so, again, for this one, all right, like 1970s, totally an iguana. I think I'm good with that. Then I think because people started hearing about this encounter, also I'm just more inclined to believe police officers in that sense. Like, why would they lie? Why would they make up a monster that they found? But then I think people probably got wind of this story and started making up their own. Because the thing about 1955 with the wizard frogs, that's not true. I do not believe that 1 second. All right. And then 2016, I can't believe Pokemon Go has been around for like 7 years already. 2016, playing Pokemon Go, claim they saw a giant frog near Lake Isabella. Maybe they did, but maybe it was just like a big toad and not like a 3 foot tall, 50-pound frog, right? Anyway, our final story here happened on the night of April 25th, 1973, when Henry McDaniel was hanging out at his home in Enfield, Illinois, and he heard scratching at his door. He looked out his front window and saw what he thought was a bear standing on his porch trying to get inside, which is odd because I don't know how many bears there are in Illinois. I didn't really think Illinois was a big bear population kind of place, but I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. After grabbing his gun and a flashlight, he sneaked out the back door and found the creature trying to hide between some rose bushes. When Henry shined the flashlight at the bushes, he quickly realized it was not a bear. It had 3 legs, a short human-like body, 2 stubby arms, and 2 pink eyes. It was over 4 feet tall with gray skin. And I don't know what that would even begin to be, right? All right. So let's break it down here. 4 foot tall creature with gray skin. All right. Kind of thinking, all right, maybe this is like maybe a monkey that's escaped from the circus. I don't know. Pink eyes. Ugh, I don't know what has pink eyes in it. Maybe monkeys have pink eyes. I don't know. 2 short, stubby arms. All right. But then 3 legs. And not like 2 legs and a giant dick that makes it look like he's got 3 legs, but like 3 legs. So he's got 5 appendages. And I don't know what that could even come close to being. Who knows? Who knows? All right. So, Henry did the right thing. He fired 4 shots at this creature, hitting it once, which isn't great accuracy considering he was practically at point blank range when he fired the shots, but whatever. The creature let out a loud hiss and then bounded off to a railway embankment. And according to Henry, this thing covered 50 feet in just 3 leaps. Police quickly arrived on the scene and found footprints near the house. They noted that they looked like dog prints with 6 toe pads, like how, which I think dogs only have 5, but this one had 6. Anyway, doesn't matter. But Henry was adamant that these prints did not belong to a dog. It belonged to something else. Henry was even quoted as saying, "If they do find it, they will find more than one and they won't be from this planet." So Henry thinks this is an alien. Greg Garrett, a 10-year-old neighbor of Henry's, initially told investigators that he had seen the creature 30 minutes before Henry did, saying that it had actually shredded his shoes. However, Garrett later recanted his testimony, saying that it was all a hoax just to tease Henry and have fun with an out-of-town investigator. It wasn't clear, though, at that point, if Garrett was admitting that the entire incident itself was a hoax or if he had just fabricated his own sighting of it. 2 weeks later, Henry called into the local radio station claiming to have seen the creature again walking down the railroad tracks. The station's news director organized a search party the next day where this group claimed to see an ape-like creature standing inside an abandoned building near Henry's house. They recorded sounds of the creature and fired a shot at it, which then forced it to run away. Both of these encounters got widespread press, especially in nearby Chicago. Skeptics, however, suggested that the creature was just a kangaroo that had escaped from the zoo. Great. You know what? I take back the comment I made about 2 legs and a giant dick, because that makes sense. All right. A kangaroo, if you don't, look, if it's dark and you're not expecting to see a kangaroo on your front porch, that would look like it has 3 legs and 2 stubby arms. That makes perfect sense. All right. Totally get that. Henry, however, disagreed with that notion, recalling his past military experience and actually owning a pet kangaroo while he was stationed in Australia. So, who knows? However, following this encounter with the group from the radio station, the Enfield Monster was never seen again. And that's it. So, fourth edition of our stories about monsters in the books. Over halfway done with our spooky October month of episodes. So let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, even the Mormons got involved in investigating cryptids and such with the Bear Lake Monster, but it was all a hoax. Like the dude who invented the story literally claimed it was a hoax, but no one seemed to listen, and people still think there's a monster in Bear Lake. Number two, the Loveland Frog. Not a frog, it was an iguana, and then all the stories around it, probably not true, but 2 police officers probably did find and kill a giant iguana in Ohio. And then number 3, the Enfield Monster. Was it a kangaroo or was it an alien? No one actually really knows, I guess. Next week on Our Weird World, we are going back to some more stories about aliens. This time, people who claimed to have been contacted by aliens. And we're going to have some fun with this one next week. Probably going to be a little bit shorter of an episode. These are 3 pretty short stories, but still going to be just a hoot and a half for sure. Looking at the stories of Elizabeth Clare, George Van Tassel, and Gloria Lee. And, oh boy, yeah, I'm going to have fun, especially with Elizabeth Clare's story, and you will find out why next week. That is going to do it for us on today's episode. Thank you all for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends, and keep it weird. Way down in the holler back in Kentucky, catfish on the line, clean it, throw it in a bucket. Come on. Yeah, come on. Way up in them diesels, sitting closest to God. Ride the bull 8 seconds, pull the gate when you nod. Yeah, out in the bush with my bushmaster, pull tapping bush light. Jar full of outlaw, have you feeling all right? Scuffs on my beams, wearing these jeans. Roll Tide, go Vols, SEC. Smoking, drinking, fighting, riding. Race this track as hard to straight. Southern Belles still right beside us. Damn good day when the fish is biting. Topping water, sinking bobbers. I get these looks from my mama. Kick ass from my father. Come on. DOWNSOUTH for the win. Down south. That is where I reside. Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky till I die. Got the 606 and the 615. Got the 828 and the 865. Got the 706 sitting right beside me, with my Knox County boys pulling up behind me. Surviving, we livin', stealing hearts with a grin, and fried chicken, cat head biscuits, summertime, cold beer, sweet smoked brisket, down home sexy, yeah, we know it, fresh picked sweet corn, baby, we grow it, redneck, backwoods, caught some bang in my twang, with some grit, 'cause I'm Southern. Yeah, I'm Southern.